Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. Our guest today is Jeremy Plank, the Chief Deputy of the Madison County Treasurer's Office. Mr. Plank has announced he is running for the position of Madison County Auditor. A county auditor plays a vital role, a fiscal officer of a county with oversight responsibilities of all the financial books and records. Mr. Plank has said he will run for that office based upon his background as a certified public accountant. He has a bachelor's of science in accountancy and a master's in business administration, both of them from Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville. In the summer of 2011, Mr. Plank was named by the Alton Telegraph as one of the 20 under 40 young people recognized by the public as rising leaders. Today we'll be speaking to him about his work at the Treasurer's Office and why he wants to be the next Madison County Auditor. Jeremy Plank, welcome to Conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're glad to have you here. The real question is that I asked at the very end is why you want to be the auditor. But before we get to that, let's just do a little background check. As to before we even started this, you were saying that you grew up in a small town in Missouri, and so why don't we start from there? How you got from there to being the Chief Deputy of the Treasurer's Office in Madison County, Illinois?
Sure. I grew up in a family of 4 boys. I was the third of 4. My dad worked 2 jobs for many years, and then he got a job at the local power plant. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and we lived on a street named Hill Street. We literally lived down the hill from Mr. and Mrs. Hill, and I believe the street was named after them, so it was kind of an interesting point. But
small towns are like that.
Yes.
Like the Mellencamp street or something is named because at the end there's where the Mellencamp people or
sure.
Stroth camps.
Absolutely. And so the town was about 1,500 residents, and so we grew up there and had fun with the local residents. But when I graduated high school, I ended up going to school to be a pastor, and I actually moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota. Went from a small town of 1,500 people to living in the inner city of Minneapolis and going to school there. Yeah, it was a huge change, a culture shock for me, if you will. But through that experience, I learned quite a bit about who I am and who I would become. I finished my degree to become a pastor there at North Central University, but I decided that I didn't want to go into ministry at that point. I wasn't sure if I wanted to handle the rigors of being a pastor, and my passions were starting to change a little bit. I initially thought that I wanted to go to law school, and so I applied to St. Louis University, and by that time I had met my wife and was accepted to St. Louis University for law school. Then I received the bill, and I thought, well, do I want to go ahead and go through with this? Because I need to be very serious about this if I'm going to spend this kind of money. So I ended up backing off of that experience, and so I went back to school at SIUE here in Edwardsville and went to get my master's in business administration. Finished that degree, and then I went back for an accounting degree, a bachelor's in accounting, and eventually ended up with my CPA. And so that is my education experience at this point. Now, just over 10 years ago, I married my wife and my son, who is 8 years old now, and we currently live in Wood River and have been there for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've had business experience since the early 2000s, managed cash for a construction company in Bethalto, and worked for an accounting and public accounting firm, and have had auditing experience as well. And so I have a pretty good background, and I think I understand and have a pretty good grasp of where things ought to be for the county and where things are and how far we need to go.
So how did you get from being in the business community to now you're the Chief Deputy Treasurer for Madison County Treasurer's Office. How did that transition occur?
Good question. When I was in high school, I had a teacher. He was an American government teacher, and he would always stimulate discussions about politics. I'm not sure if that was because he didn't want to teach or what the situation was, but we all loved him. And he would stimulate political conversation, and it was through that experience that I really started to kind of hone down what my philosophy was. And I had decided that I was on the conservative side of the philosophy. And over the years, I developed that philosophy and really tried to hone down what my sentiments were. I didn't really get active politically up until about 4 years ago during the presidential election. I thought
2008.
Correct. And what I did was I went out and I found a local candidate and said, look, I'm willing to help you, do whatever you want, go to door, whatever you need. And so I did that in Chris Slusser, who was running for county board at the time, because all politics is local, and so in order to get involved, you need to start from the ground, and you need to be willing to volunteer, not just expect things from other people. So I did that, and I got involved locally with the local Republican Party and some good candidates. And so through that experience, I got to know some good folks. And then with the election of 2010, I knew Kurt Prenzler, who is my boss currently, through a couple of experiences, but I didn't really know him that well. When he won the election, some folks said, hey, you need to interview Jeremy Plank. And so he interviewed me, and through that process, he hired me to be the Chief Deputy Treasurer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been with him since December of last year, 2010. And through that experience, we have been able to do several things, which I'm sure you have questions about yourself.
Well, first I was going to ask, what are the duties of the Treasurer's Office? What does the Treasurer's Office do for the people of Madison County?
Sure, there's two major functions of the Treasurer's Office. It's to collect taxes and to distribute taxes. That's all basically one function.
Mm-hmm.
The second function is to manage the investment portfolio for the county.
Why do you have money to invest? Is there that much slushing around?
Well, that's a good question. I think that's a question that a lot of folks are asking, especially now that we live in a county where we are in the top 7.5% nationally for the most expensive property taxes. So why does the county have so much money? Part of it is we have 78 special revenue funds, and all of those special revenue funds bring in special revenues or revenues that are designed for a specific purpose.
What's the difference between a special and a regular?
An example would be like the matching tax fund or the motor fuel tax fund, where we receive taxes from motor fuel taxes, and that's a special revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And so that cash has to be managed in a specific way, and that all gets pooled into a major investment pool, along with the general fund and several other special revenue funds. So we have a portfolio that currently runs at $115 million. Roughly $20 million of that is designated for the general fund, okay? And it's that money that gets debated on a regular basis as far as how it should be used. And over the years that has accumulated. Basically what has happened, and this is one factor, is that you budget, and then in certain cases you don't quite spend all of your budget,
mm-hmm.
and so that grows, that investment pool grows.
Right.
In other cases they spend their budget and then some, but you budget for certain items and you don't spend it, like for insurance purposes. The county is self-insured, but we still budget every year for insurance in case something terrible happens. So, but most years that doesn't get spent.
Mm-hmm.
And so over the years that has grown. Part of that is due also to the tobacco settlement from several years past, which was roughly $17 million, and that was included, of course, in that pool. So we have that investment pool that we manage on a regular basis, and of course the collection and the distribution of taxes. Like I like to tell folks that we take people's money and give it to somebody else. I mean, it's redistribution at its simplest.
Mm-hmm. Now, what is your function as a deputy?
My function as a deputy is to run the office and to make sure that the operations function properly and to make sure that employees are doing their jobs.
Other than yourself and Mr. Prenzler, how many employees are in the treasurer's office?
We currently have 12 full-time employees, which includes both myself and Mr. Prenzler, so 10 full-time employees.
That's not a whole lot.
No, that's not a whole lot. Before Kurt took office, there were 18. We also had 2 additional employees for payroll, which has since been moved into a separate department.
Mm-hmm.
So we felt like our obligation was to the taxpayers, not to any other entities. So we said, okay, are there efficiencies that we can realize here? And obviously, my boss made the promise during the election process that he would cut the budget by 30%. And so we set out to do that. And we accomplished that goal. In fact, not only did we save over $300,000 on what is basically $1 million budget for the treasurer's office, we, because of additional payroll savings, we've saved upwards of $400,000 to the county.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just for 1 year. So, and we planned to operate at that level for years to come. So the savings, we believe, to taxpayers will be much, much greater when it's all said and done.
So do you wind up turning this money back to some account? So you were given $1 million, you spend 700 or 600,000 of it, that means there's 300,000 or 400,000 left somewhere. What happens to that money?
What happens to that money? Of course, it's levied. That money is levied, so it basically adds to the balance of the investment pool. Okay, so, or it gets spent via other means in the general fund, because it's general fund money. And so, but it's that underspending of the budget that increases the investment pool, which calls people to ask questions as to why we have $115 million in investments, which is a very legitimate question, and it's one that I think needs to be answered at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And we're concerned about
Who
it.
makes those? Is that the county board's decision, or whose decision is it as to how much money is going to be in this investment pool?
Well, it kind of grows on its own. So as far as
somebody's got to be in charge of this. There's got to be some decision makers somewhere.
Right. You basically have the 2 functions that either cause it to grow or cause it to decrease. You have the levy, which causes it to grow, and of course,
the levy meaning telling people how much their taxes are going to be.
Correct. And
Right.
the budget drives that levy, how much they ask for from taxpayers.
So you could, or no, not you, but the people who make these decisions, if they wanted less money flowing in, they would say collect less, so they tell people, well, your tax rate just went down?
Right. So what the county board can say is, we're going to collect less. And we can draw down the funds from our general fund, what is really a rainy day fund for the general fund.
Well, before we go there, I want to again make it plain to people who are listening that when they pay their property tax, 60 to 70% of that's actually going to the schools.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Only about like 8 cents out of every dollar that they pay is going to the county.
Roughly.
And all this
yes.
extra, this how much did you say?
115 million.
115 million has actually grown out of that 8 cents that's
Correct.
being collected for the county.
That is correct.
Okay, so you're only talking about that range of the tax bill. It's this 8 cents, so it could be 7 cents, right?
Right, on a comparable basis.
That's what we're talking about.
Currently it's at 9 cents, currently.
Oh, it is at 9?
Yes.
Okay.
In the past it has been at 8.
Right.
But currently it's at 9.
So if it went to 8 or 7, they would be collecting less into the county.
Yes.
But the savings to each individual would be
Very
minimal.
Very small.
Yeah, I mean,
very small.
Couple bucks.
Right. And so to really see major savings on your tax bill, you have to talk to the major taxing districts.
Well,
I mean,
being the school district.
Right. And that's not something I can speak to at this point, obviously, but the areas that I can have influence over, I believe that I need to to honor the taxpayers and be efficient with how we spend their money. And I'm not sure that they have been in the past. I mean, we have for many years looked to use it or lose it, and a lot of governmental entities are like that. We need to change that philosophy, and I'm genuinely concerned about it, and I want to do at least my small part to influence that a little bit.
So now we've come to the point, and I do, in a moment, I want to switch over to, you know, the auditor. Well, I guess we could start this by what is, as the deputy treasurer, what is your relationship to the auditor's office?
We reconcile with the auditor's office on a daily basis as far as the transactions that come through the treasurer's office, and we make sure that the general ledger is balanced based on the transactions that come through our office. And so we have to have a working relationship on a daily basis.
And they're the ones that actually are looking at your books to make sure that you added and subtracted correctly, right?
Correct. Correct.
That's their job.
That is their job, yes. And we actually have, you know, we try to balance with them every single day with all of the transactions that come through our office. And, you know, as with humans, there's always differences that you try to work through, and you know, you try to make those right. That's going to happen anywhere you go. But we do try to balance with them on a daily basis with those transactions. But you know, we have to have a good working relationship with them.
Your big part of the year, though, is what, like July through September time frame? Isn't that when most of the property tax is coming into Madison County?
Well, it used to be that with the two-payment system that recently went to a four-payment system, it used to be it was July through the end of November, essentially, when you ended with the tax sale. With the four-payment system, which a lot of folks like, it now ends in February with the tax sale, which we recently just had last week. And so it extends out the year, and that's pretty much our busy time.
You've got to point out to people now that you've said that we're sitting here recording this on February 28th, so they'll be seeing it at some point in the future, so it wouldn't be actually last week. But so that's why
very good
that's
point.
why I tell people. But tax sales, there's another part, another function of the treasurer's office, right?
Yes.
And that became a controversial issue during the election for treasurer in 2010.
Yes.
Describe first of all, what is a tax sale, and then describe why it was controversial in 2010.
Yes. The basic concept behind a tax sale is, you know, there's a certain percentage of taxpayers who end up not being able to pay their taxes on time. But then you have this conundrum where the taxing districts are looking to get a hold of their money as soon as they can. So, and the tax sale was a solution to that process.
But you're not selling people's property like days after it's due, right? There's a
Correct.
How long between the time that it was due and the time that you actually decide that enough's enough? There's
about 2 to 2.5 months between the last due date and the tax sale. In the tax sale, we don't actually sell their property. What we do is we sell their taxes so that the taxing districts can get their tax levy now as opposed to later when the taxpayer actually pays. And so with
that the Treasury somebody else loans the Treasury money, right? That's what you're doing.
Exactly.
And then those folks that owe the money actually have to pay the people who paid you.
Correct.
And plus interest.
Plus interest.
And that's where the controversy came in, right?
That's correct.
Explain the controversy.
The controversy is that with the tax sale auction, it is what's called a reverse auction. And so they start at a bidding on the interest rate, and the maximum interest rate allowed by law is 18%. And they bid it down based on risk. So if they think they're going to get paid, then they'll bid down a lower rate.
These are these investors who are loaning you the money.
Correct.
And they're loaning you the money based upon they're going to get their money back plus some interest.
Correct.
And so they think they can get as much as 18, but it can be as low as?
It can be as low as 0.
Okay.
So if they think there's an opportunity for them to realize a profit by other means, then they will bid it down to 0. In fact, we had several at this last tax sale that bid it down to 0.
Now, what was it like prior to the Mr. Prenzler becoming the treasurer?
Sure. The controversy was around the tax sales in the 2000s under Fred Bathon. What was happening is that these tax sales were going at the maximum rate allowed by law.
The 18%.
18%.
So that meant that the people who owed the tax plus 18%.
Right. And here's the kicker. Not only were they paying 18% if they came in the next day to redeem or to pay off that loan, every 6 months that same 18% goes up by another 18%. So it went from 18%
to 36,
to 36, to 54, to 72, to 90.
Isn't there a usury law in Illinois?
It went up to a maximum of 108% of the original tax bill plus fees.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what we discovered is that at the tax sale, all but 8 properties went at 18%. All but 8, and the ones that didn't were going at 12%. Not 13, not 14, not 15, not 7.
And your recent sales were?
Our recent sales we did with an automated system.
What's the percentage on average?
2.65% weighted average.
So it went from 18, mostly 18, to mostly under 3.
Correct.
Okay. And the controversy is that homeowners were getting stuck if they wanted to hold their property, paying huge tax bills rather than small amounts of interest rate.
Correct.
And that was determined at the auction that was held by the treasurer of that period.
That is correct.
Okay.
And so what we've discovered is that there are certain folks who see this burden, and whether they lost their job or kept their job, the burden became a mountain instead of a molehill.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't able to pay off the tax burden. And after 3 to 3.5 years, the tax buyer can apply for a deed to the home. So they can take ownership to the home after having spent a fraction of the value of that home.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly the homeowner becomes a renter of the home that they've owned for many years. And so the manipulation of the system created a very damaging system to homeowners, property owners, business owners, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really is a frustrating process. And I've said this before, is that the property tax code is one of the most unforgiving tax codes in our system today. If you have a job, and if you lose that job, you don't pay income tax because you don't have a job. But if you lose your job, you still owe property tax if you own a home.
Right. Now we come to the big question. You're a candidate for auditor, Republican, correct?
Yes.
Why? What is it about being auditor that excites you so much that you want to switch from the treasurer's office to the auditor's office?
Well, I believe I can have greater influence in the auditor's office.
To do what?
To influence the budgetary process, to influence the way money is spent. Now, do I vote on those particular aspects? No, but I can shed light. I can shed light on the things that are being money is being spent on. I can shed light on that. And with my background, I know how to audit. I know how to audit risk-based areas, to do those things, to discover the things that are being done, whether it's being done right or not right.
Well, you don't think that there's anything criminal or crooked going on in Madison
I'm not
County
talking
right now?
about criminality. I'm
Right.
talking about doing the things that protect the taxpayers from abuse, from spending money that's not necessarily needing to be spent. But as with any entity, there are things. We've seen in the newspapers recently that with the economy the way it is, particularly with some credit unions and some banks, had employees who were siphoning money away from the bank, and you would have never have guessed it looking and talking with these folks saying, would this person do this? No, but at least implement audit procedures that help alleviate and prevent some of these things, and going and doing testing to make sure that these things are not being done. Can you find everything? No. Not even outside auditors find everything. They don't find it all. And they don't claim to. but at least we can implement procedures to protect the taxpayers. And, you know, I like Mr. Fasten. He's a nice guy. But I don't think that there have been some things in the past decade, that he has overlooked. He's turned the other way, particularly with the bond sale issue. During 2010, the investment policy was violated 21 times to the tune of $57 million. Right after the election, where my boss was elected, they purchased $36 million in bonds, 20 million of which violated the investment policy, and he did not say or do anything. And I look at that and I say, why is he not saying or doing anything? Is it because of party affiliation? Is it because of background experience? Is it because he's just asleep at the wheel? I don't know. But the fact is, he didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. And now he wants to come after my boss, Kurt Prenzler, for reinvesting the money in local banks, reinvesting the money at a lower rate, at a more safe institution. And it's very interesting.
The claim is that as a result of the sale, that there was some $360,000 that was lost, or an opportunity to gain it was lost. Plus, there have been some calls of the bonds since then, so they would have been redeemed anyways at a loss of some $700,000. Apparently, there's enough back and forth here that it appears to be that yes, the policy was violated, but no criminality was intended in this. Is that?
We're not talking about criminality
here. Just lost opportunity to make money is what they say, and I believe Mr. Prenzler would say that we also secured the money so there wouldn't be even further losses if there was some hiccup in the market.
Well,
we're down to like about 2 minutes here.
Okay.
So.
The investment policy required that nothing be invested in beyond 10 years.
Right.
It has nothing to do with AAA rating. It has everything to do with the exposure to interest rate risk. Mm-hmm. We had almost all of our eggs invested in one basket before my boss took office. 70% of the portfolio was in long-term bonds, exposing taxpayer funds to vast amounts of interest rate risk. By the end of 2010, $2.5 million in write-downs. 3 months later, that turned into $5 million in write-downs. Mr. Fasten did not say or do anything. Mm-hmm. He was not concerned about that. He was not concerned about the losses. Like in a 401k, I would be concerned about my 401k if that were happening.
Unfortunately, they're telling me that we have run clean out. Should have started this part earlier, I guess, but okay. If I might suggest that the public is confused and that there needs to be some simplified method by which this can be conveyed to them.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for being with us today. I've been speaking with excuse me, Jeremy Plank. He is the deputy in the Treasurer's Office, Madison County, Illinois. We're glad to have had him with us, and we're looking forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.